Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us for our discussion on NoSQL databases and FME. We're going to try and give you an overview of how we think FME may fit in and help you adopt your NoSQL databases. My name is Mark Stokes, and with me today is Steve McCabe.
Good morning, everyone.
He's one of our lead database experts at SAFE. Also at our end, we've got Stephanie Warner, who's our webinar producer, and we've also got Dean Hintz, who's one of our SAFE software experts, and he's helping us with the questions you may have. If you have any questions about FME or what we're presenting here, please use your GoToWebinar panel, and we can ensure that Dean is kept busy over there on that side of the office.
Yes.
Our loose agenda is we're going to have a quick look at NoSQL databases supported by FME. If you're not familiar with FME, we'll have a very quick look at what FME is about. And then we've got some other discussions and demonstrations on how FME might work with your NoSQL databases. Just one thing about the presentation. We are recording the presentation here today. And you'll get a follow-up email that includes the link to the recording, the actual presentation slides, and any of the examples that we have. If you want to use those as a starting point, you'll be able to download those. So you'll get an email in a couple of days with links to the recording and the demonstration materials. Just as I'm talking here, maybe we could get a quick show of hands on your GoToWebinar panel there for which people are actively using a NoSQL database in your organization, just to give us an idea of who's doing what within the group that's listening today. We've got about 100 attendees in our audience today. So FME supports a wide range of NoSQL databases, from DocumentDB, DynamoDB, Elasticsearch, and so on. Interestingly, FME also supports the Postgres JSON data type, and we know of a couple of people that have been experimenting in Postgres using Postgres as a NoSQL database, because they can just set up the two columns of the data type. We're kind of referring to NoSQL here in a bit of a broad brush way. We're including key value pair databases, document databases, search databases, namely any unstructured database as opposed to more structured databases like relational databases or column databases. And how does FME fit in here? Well, obviously, FME's got connectors to NoSQL databases, so that's a starting point. We can read or write from your NoSQL databases. FME has got strong support for JSON and XML. Some of these databases do allow XML blobs and XML and JSON manipulation, so that's a key part to reading and writing documents from your NoSQL. Plus, we've got a wide range of data connectors to other formats, so you can get your disparate data into or out of your NoSQL in the format of your choice. And I'll just add here that FME can also handle your spatial data if appropriate. So most of these NoSQL databases do handle spatial data, vector data, as a GeoJSON entity, so FME can help you put that into your database as well. How many people did we have there showing hands around NoSQL? Not that many people in the audience actually running a NoSQL database actively. So
yeah.
That's interesting. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully this will give you the incentive to get moving and experimenting on that front.
That's right.
Just another show of hands there from people. Which of you might be using actively, sorry, start again. Who in the audience is relatively new to FME, either just downloaded it and getting started with FME, or is new and hasn't used FME at this point in time? So for those of you that are not familiar with FME, we're a data translation tool. We connect to 300 plus disparate systems ranging from databases to a variety of formats that may or may not include a spatial component, such as vector, data, raster, or point cloud information. Within FME, we also have a wide range of transformation tools to meet your data needs. Over 400 transformation tools in FME, actually, including tools specifically designed to structure or interpret your JSON or XML documents that might be involved in your NoSQL story. We've also got some automation tools. Steve is going to talk about those later on, and that's our FME server product. So that's a wide range of automating your jobs through scheduling tasks, real-time data, JMS notifications and those kind of notifications, database triggers, directory watches. So we'll have a brief look at how they might fit into your NoSQL. And our goal is to have you never write code and, if possible, do everything through our GUI interface in our application called FME Workbench. What did we have? We didn't have too many brand new users there, I think, in the show of hands, so that's good. So most of the attendees here are look like they have touched FME in some way or another before, so that's good. So why are people adopting NoSQL databases? Well, I'm not going to recommend that you go and dump your enterprise relational databases and switch everything to NoSQL. That's not our job here today. In fact, as far as we can tell, most organizations use a polyglot approach to implementing NoSQL. That is, they keep their traditional enterprise databases, their relational databases, and complement those with a NoSQL one, rather than using a rip and replace approach where you rip out your enterprise relational database and replace that with NoSQL. That might not be the best way to go. So why use NoSQL? Well, relational databases are often finely tuned to the data that they house or the application that's using that data. So it's usually a good idea to keep the existing data stores in your enterprise database and then integrate your NoSQL data technology. This is a really good use case for FME in this space. So here are some thoughts on why organizations are looking at NoSQL, often, as I've said, in parallel to the existing relational databases you're using. Well, the heart of the digital economy is all around web, mobile, Internet of Things applications. Lots of very unstructured data there, so that's where the strength of the NoSQL is, in that unstructured data. The other area that we're seeing people using this or getting interested is that most organizations have several relational databases, enterprise-level databases, that are serving very specific domains, ERP, HR, assets, GIS, AMFN, you name it. And it's very difficult to search across those stovepipes. And so that's where a NoSQL database might come to play, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. NoSQL document databases are very agile because they're schema-less and don't statically define how the data must be modeled. And so the data model can evolve as new attributes or new data relationships appear within your data or your data needs. Relational databases usually have a normalized or shredded structure of the data and requiring several joins to deliver a single object. And in NoSQL databases, those JSON documents often represent one comprehensive object. So there's some strength in that as well. And then also, because of their relative simplicity, and this is the claim of most of the NoSQL database manufacturers, is that they're easier to scale because they are so simple with their data structure. And so it's easier to grow the database as more data streams in from the never-ending Internet of Things.
And yes, as Mark mentions, more data streams will come. When you consider the industrial Internet of Things, not just the Internet of Things, the volumes of data are are much larger with the industrial Internet of Things. We really start to see why it's important to have the data stores that are agile and basically boundless for how big they can grow. And I do believe NoSQL databases will become an integral part of businesses if they haven't already begun to.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's kick off the webinar with a quick demo. So I'm going to let Steve take over. And he's going to give us a quick demonstration on FME working with a NoSQL database. So over to you, Steve.
All right. So we're just going to switch systems here. We're going to get over to our next demo here. What we're going to take a look at is this air quality website that has been put together by a group of scientists. And what we're going to show here is an example of how we can scrape this or pull a JSON feed from this data website. And I'll just quickly show you that JSON feed that we're going to be interacting with. And that's at that there. And we're going to pull that information in. But first, let's go look. We've published these workspaces. We created those. We're going to take you through those very quickly in a moment. But just to show you FME Server, here is the schedules that we have set up on FME Server that's running this particular workspace, that's reading that website, that JSON feed, and loading it into a MongoDB NoSQL database. And so that's kind of what is happening there. So what I'm going to do here is I'll just show you the MongoDB database. We have our support database in here that contains lots of collections. We're going to be creating a new collection called Air Quality Index Data. And just to show you that that's not there right now, I'm going to do a little refresh on the database, and we'll see that we get a list of collections coming up. And here we see a particular collection we already created. So I'm going to run this one here now, and that's going to go out to that JSON feed that I was just showing you, and it's going to write it to that MongoDB database that we just showed you as well through the RoboMongo interface. So we'll let that finish. It's just going to take a few seconds longer here. Usually, it always feels longer when you're live, doesn't it, Mark?
That's right.
There,
yeah.
There we go. So we've gone out and we've pulled in 7,232 records. So now if we go back to our RoboMongo interface, and we'll just do another refresh on that database. We'll show the new collection that we've created under the support database, and here that is. And I can come in here and I can view those documents. And again, each of these documents is just really a collection of JSON, so we can view that as well. And so that's what that looks like for now.
And magically, that job that you ran just then created that JSON document and inserted it into the database.
That's right, yeah. So we've just showing a little bit of capabilities there of FME. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is we're going to run another workspace. So if I just go back to the home page here, the second workspace we're going to run. Now you've got this data that you've pulled in. Maybe in the case of what we've been doing, we've been scraping this website for how long now? Since the beginning of the year. What we're going to show today is just creating a quick HTML report just from the from that data that we've collected today. So we're just going to run that. It's going to write out to a local folder here, and I'll run that now. And what this is doing is taking the MongoDB database, what's been written to there, and we're just pulling out a nice little HTML report that we've created within using FME. And here's that report. So we can see here that we've got all the air quality indexes from around the world. And if we scroll down, we've got the Vancouver, BC. And we can see here what we're looking at for a very nice clean air today, although it's very wet outside. And just all this here was generated within the workspace using the HTML generator, report generator. So that's a little bit on those two workspaces. So now, we're going to dive a little bit deeper again into that, and we're going to look at the workspace and how you can create that workspace very easily. So the first thing we want to have is we're going to go out to the air quality index website, and that's going to be just a straight JSON format that we're going to be adding here. Now I have a little cheat. I know that JSON feed that we're using here that I showed you earlier in the presentation, this one here, That's what we're going to be using here. So I'm just going to go out to fme.ly/air. I think I probably need, that should go out to our website. If I get it wrong, yeah, coming in. So it's going to download that JSON feature type, and now we want to make that aware. We're going to do some create some coordinates off that. So we're going to use a vertex creator here to generate a geographical point. And that's one thing that FME provides, is a lot of power. If you're NoSQL databases, we can deal with the geographic components of those features very nicely. So let's add in a vertex creator. And we can see that we've pulled the very familiar X and Y's into that automatically for ourselves. Now we're going to clean up that data. So we've got a few attributes in there that we're not going to need. So we're going to clean those up and remove those. We're going to make use of the new attribute manager, which has been around since the beginning of 2016. And now I want to, basically, I'm going to remove everything. I'm going to keep city. So let's go here. We got city. I want TZ. Get rid of index, image, stamp, long, few other ones here. The air quality index, we definitely want that one. And we'll get rid of the rest of these. So we're just going to set these. We're going to clean up our workspace by removing those. So that's just going to give us a little more concise list of the attributes that we want to see in there. And then one thing we've noticed with this data is the air quality index. When it's empty, it actually comes through as a dash. We want the data to go into the MongoDB database as an integer at all times. So we're going to do an attribute validator just to clean up that data a little bit more and make sure we're not getting any bad data coming through. So let's pick up our air quality index attribute, and then we've got a type, and we want to make sure that that is an integer. And there we have it. So now comes the part where we're going to write out to our MongoDB database. So I've just typed in the format. Now in 2016 we've introduced, well I guess 2015 we introduced the database connection. So I already have a MongoDB connection that's pointing to that particular database that I want to work with. And so I can just click on OK there, and that's going to go out, make a connection to it. We're going to give this air quality. I'm going to give it a name of air quality. It's amazing how your spelling goes downhill when you're doing the live. Yep. So we're just going to give that a new name, different than what we have in that Robo MongoDB that I showed you. So here it is. And that's really all we have to do in here. We've set this to automatic, so those attributes will automatically come through. And we can just click on OK there. And we can link that up to our passport of the attribute validator. And now if we just hit play, we're going to come back to the Robo MongoDB in a second here. And we'll just let this run.
Okay, so just to review, so the first time you ran this, you ran an equivalent workflow
That's right.
through a web interface. Nobody had to know anything about the application you're using now, the Workbench. And now you've just recreated that same workflow right in Workbench and run it there as well.
Yeah, that's right. So in this case, I gave it the exact same name as this, I believe. So we should have no difference in the particular collection we collected, but really just showing you how easy it is to get that data into the MongoDB NoSQL database.
And in this case, the MongoDB writer is creating the JSON document. It's a pretty simple JSON document that we want, so we aren't doing anything particularly
that's right.
Sophisticated.
And what's nice about these NoSQL databases, I mean, I think I actually had an extra attribute in there, and it had no problem writing to the same document, right? So that's the power of these very agile data models that NoSQL databases offer. All right, so
I'm going to take over being the presenter here.
Yeah, and again, we didn't really show it, but to publish that up to FME server, it's really a click of a button, and you have your workspace up on your FME server system. So.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. That's great.
All right.
Just a really quick demo of how straightforward it is to get some data into a NoSQL database. So in the context of FME working with NoSQL databases, we've got some ideas on what might be good use cases for that. One is migrating relational database data into a NoSQL. Why would people want to do that? We've got a couple of people that have been experimenting with this kind of use case. Well, that would be to create a single searchable data catalog across all your organization's data silos. So your many enterprise databases that you might have, you compile them all into a single searchable NoSQL database and then start to do searches across there, so people within your organization can find out what other people are doing, where data might be available that they can use so that you don't have to duplicate data gathering. And so that could include the health data, assets, orders, contracts, contacts as well, GIS data if you need it. A whole wide range of data could be stuffed into that NoSQL database. The Internet of Things and the industrial internet, this is the data that just keeps on giving. Typically time series from sensors, a continuous stream of data that's published or is real time, and you need to keep feeding that into your NoSQL database. Steve, you've got a little example of that coming up in a little while.
That's right.
So we're going to have a look at that. Another use case is just looking at event logs. So you might have a system that is logging information and keeping track of the status of that application. And actually, we've been looking at doing that for our own product here, FME Server. Keeping your NoSQL database up to date. So as new database data comes in, obviously that's a good task for FME. We can help you keep the data up to date. And of course, Steve has shown that we can help you extract your data from NoSQL into the wide range of formats that FME supports. And so you can create simple reports, or in some cases, people want to get the data out of NoSQL and structure it for a relational database, surprisingly. So we just saw that earlier on, Steve showed that you can extract your NoSQL data and give you a view of it in a simple HTML report. The point of loading data into NoSQL databases is so that you can do some searching and analysis on your data, that is, convert your data into information, extract trends, and gain some knowledge about the data or your systems that you're working with. Most NoSQL databases do have some sort of connector to a BI platform. It could be Tableau, Click, or Spotfire, etc. Many have their own applications for doing some analysis, Elasticsearch and Kibana here shown here. Some of that air quality data that we've been recording over the last 9 months shown up in this a couple of images that one of our colleagues put together for us from Kibana. MongoDB has a Compass application. DocumentDB works with Power BI, and I'm sure the others have equivalent systems. And I should just add here, FME can also connect to some of these BI platforms as well. So FME's got a connector to Tableau. So if you want to pass the data and filter it through FME, that's an option that you have as well. So one of the common uses for NoSQL is data aggregation. I mentioned that was something that some of our users are looking at is aggregating their enterprise databases so they have a common searchable platform. You can do this in a couple of ways. You can take all your data from different stovepipes and throw that into a common NoSQL database so you can search across the platform. Or another approach to that is to grab the metadata of the data and just store the metadata and aggregate that in a metadata catalog in a NoSQL database. And then you can search for and locate the data that might be of interest to your specific project. This might be more appropriate where the data changes are a bit more unpredictable on the scheduling of the data updates. So the kind of things that you might be pulling from for a metadata catalog would be some WMS kind of data sources, the OGC style data sources you might have. FME can load imagery, and so those can be grabbed, and the metadata about that imagery and their location could be loaded into a metadata catalog. Might be just raw data on an FTP kind of data store or an S3 bucket. We could sift through and again grab the information about the data. Other sources could be just XML or Excel reports. And of course, out there as well, many APIs that some people serve their data up on their websites can be used. And actually, I'm going to show you a little example in a moment from the World Food Programme, who are using a CCAN API to allow you to grab their data. In other cases, we can actually just scrape the web pages, so that's doable as well to get metadata about the data. So the workflow I'm going to show you is to read some metadata from a CCAN API on the World Food Programme website. Get the data extents if there's any spatial data, so we can do that. In this case, there is some spatial data in some of their data sets. Other data sets are just CSV files that have a country name, and in that case, what we could do is geocode that so you can get a little location for the region of interest for that particular data set. And then we can create a thumbnail as well. We found that's a kind of a useful thing to have, so we can create a little image with a background map and then overlay any spatial data that might be in that data onto the thumbnail, and then we can load that into a NoSQL database. So let's have a look at a workflow and see what that might look like. So this is a slightly more complicated workflow than the one Steve was showing you just now. This is it, reading data from that World Food Programme dataset, CCAN API. And it's actually quite a wide range of data types they have. They've got traditional shape files, just CSV files floating around on their site. And so the way this workspace works is we can read in the JSON data, just like Steve was doing earlier on. In this case, they've got some additional lists in there. So we've got other JSON tools for processing those lists and getting that list data out into a more readable form. And then we're doing some work here, and at the bottom here you can see that we've got a geocoder. So for the CSV files that just have a country name, we're geocoding that and just getting a point to stick on a background map. We're creating here little thumbnails, and so I'm using a tool in FME called the image fetcher that goes out and grabs an image from a website that gives us a little bit of a background image to give us some context for the data. And then in this case here for the shape data, what I'm doing is I'm reading that shape data in and then overlaying the data on that little thumbnail image here with this tool, the vector on raster overlayer. And then the output of that would be out into our Elasticsearch database. So what do those little thumbnails look like? So that's a pretty interesting part of doing this kind of work is we are just loading the metadata in, and here's a couple of these thumbnails. So if I zoom in a bit, they're going to get a bit blurry because they are just thumbnails. So these are just point data for some of the data sets that some of the users have on this site. I think I've got another one here. Where did that go? And so those thumbnails that are just geocoded from the country name, we've got those here as well. So you can just see we've just put a marker for each country that a particular CSV file might have data for on that World Food Program website. So these are little thumbnails that we're putting together. And then I've got another little workspace that is similar to the one that Steve was running earlier on, creating a report of that data. This is it here. So this is reading that data back from the Excel spreadsheet. And I'm not going to run that right now, but this is what that Excel spreadsheet would look like. And within that spreadsheet, we can include those thumbnails. So this is just a catalog summary of all the data for the World Food Program. You can see we've got a little thumbnail, we've got a data URL to tell us where that data is, and any of the descriptions that's come out of that CCAN data set. And you can see it's a wide range of data that we've loaded in there from that the various websites that I was illustrating there. You can see here as well, within the Elasticsearch data reader, we can put in JSON queries. And so in this case here, this is an example of a query that would restrict that data read to the African continent in this particular case. So there's a quick example of how we might build a metadata catalog from a wide range of data sources, build up that catalog, and then somebody who's got interest in this particular area would be able to search for the data and find data within a region or around a topic of interest, and then know where to go and find that data if they want to work with it. I think that's a pretty good use case for FME. Okay, so back to Steve. Do I need to make you the presenter again?
You do, yeah.
Steve's going to talk about the automation, a bit more about the automation of those workflows.
All right, I've got it. Thank you, Mark. Okay, so just to kind of come back to the FME server side, the automation. When we say FME server, that also includes FME Cloud. Same product, just a different platform that we're deploying that on. So some of the automation ways we can automate FME server, we saw a little bit of that earlier when we ran those workspaces in FME server, and we had that scheduled job sitting there that's actually going out to that air quality website, pulling that data back for us daily on a regular daily interval. So there's scheduled tasks that we can set up. We could have ways of delivering that data into your inbox as a link. So that HTML report I showed earlier, you could have that actually just delivered to an audience of people, email list, and so they have that HTML report available to look at first thing in the morning. The data download, so in that case there, you could go hitting a link that pulls down a file that you can then look at yourself. And then there's also FME server has a large offering of different ways of connecting with real-time data, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But if we think about real-time data streams, the Internet of Things, I'm going to show an example of that just in a little bit. But we have lots of ways of like through WebSockets, Amazon simple notification services and queuing services, or Java messaging queues that can actually filtrate or pass data to FME server and tell FME server to do something, whether that is take that data and put it into a NoSQL database, or actually go out and say there's new data on this website, let's go get it and load that into a NoSQL database. So those are some of the ways we can do that in a kind of a real-time fashion. The WebSocket stream is something I'll show you in a moment, where we actually just sit there and it's always open, data's coming in, and we're doing something with it. In this case, throwing, checking for a certain level of measures, and if it passes that, then we're going to do something with that or store it in the database, and I'll come to that in a bit more. Some other tools that we can use with FME Server are the email publishers. So sending email in or receiving emails with information or data can also trigger some automation type tasks in FME Server. We also have the capabilities of, as I alluded to, of sending out those emails after this data has been received as well. Another way that things can happen with FME Server is related to traditional databases, and thinking of database triggers. We can actually have a database trigger that fires off a URL and notifies FME Server that some data has changed, and then instruct FME to maybe go get that data from that relational database and pull it into a NoSQL system. That sort of stuff is something also that we can do with FME Server. And then you get into the world of mobile platforms and mobile devices, which are just, they're everywhere. They're in your cars, they're on your phones. There's lots of sensors out there that are acting as these mobile platforms to send data into these systems. And again, FME Server is able to receive these notifications and do something with that data, that incoming data that's being transmitted. So we believe all of these are ways to automate and help assist you getting your data into a NoSQL database. Okay, so let's take a look at that next demo. Get to the next slide here. So one of the real-time scenarios that we have here at the office is from Valarm, which is basically it's a mobile device that is deployed on or a mobile application that's deployed on an Android device, and that is connected to some external sensors. In this case, we have VOC sensors, volatile organic compound sensors that measures parts per million in the air. So Valarm is behind those sensors, and they are in that world of the industrial Internet of Things, which is a huge data like a lot of data being moved around in the world right now. If you think of aviation, the sensors that are on a single aircraft are just mind-boggling how much data is being captured, and in a lot of cases not really being used yet as we embark on this this world of industrial Internet of Things and the sensor that can capture it. So with this device here, I'm just going to be capturing temperature, humidity, and VOCs, and I'll just show you a little bit about that demo now. So
we do seem to be fixated on air quality here. We're reading the air quality website. We've got your sensors.
Yeah.
But I think it is just an illustration of the Internet of Things. We do have customers monitoring their rail locomotives in the same way that Steve's mentioning aviation.
That's right.
Monitoring is going on. We got people monitoring lightning strikes. So all those sensors are out there and can be fed through FME Server in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah, so just to take you, thanks Mark, just to take you back into this industrial Internet of Things, this sensor here, you can see here I've got FME Server web page up, and what's happening is that device is sending off a sensor reading to the Valarm website, which is actually pushing data back to FME Server, notifying a topic, and that's what we're looking at here. We're seeing these topics being triggered, and what's actually happening in the back end is a website is being ran, and that website, or sorry, that workspace is actually doing a few things in there. It's putting some data into the NoSQL database. It's putting sending out an alert in the case of if the parts per million of the VOC are higher than like 1600 ppms, then we'll get an email notification that we've reached that. And then it also is actually sending the data out, a live feed of the data out. Every 30 seconds we're getting a reading. It's sending it out through the WebSocket. So this is one of those data streams we talked about earlier, where we're just getting a continuous feed of data, and it's happening real time right now. We have the sensor here in our web room, and we can see as we've been here, the VOCs are just creeping up slowly over time.
Because we've got the door shut.
We've got the door closed.
And the ventilation isn't great in here.
Yeah, so let's get that door open. Let's get out of here. So yeah, so that's kind of a neat way to look at what's what we can do with these sensors and how FME can actually help integrate with some of your sensors that you may have in your organization to distribute data in fun, easy ways like this. This is like very little coding in that workspace that I have on the website. So again, pretty neat stuff. So
yeah, that's really interesting stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so let's go take a look at what's going on in the FME server world related to that workflow. So if I just come in here and look at the completed workspaces that are running as jobs on the system, we can see here that here's the particular workspace that is running, and that's the one that's hitting. We also have another one on here, the bus updaters. Again, another example of live data feeds that can be being put into a NoSQL database and analyzed after the fact to see if there's any trends with your bus routes and stuff like that that could be improved upon. All right, so I think, Mark, with that, yeah, and that's another little part of it. I didn't allude to it earlier, but some of the notifications that we were doing on the air quality indexes, basically indicating whether we had a success of data pull that day or not. And here's some emails that we've triggered off of that, so we know that we're cracking that data.
Yeah, so we can make an action in FME world through a notification, and FME itself can trigger a notification based on some behavior within your workflow. And so in those cases, it's whether it was able to reach the website or not, I guess,
Yeah,
and
that's
whether
right.
the job failed,
Yeah.
or if it succeeded, then we know we have today's data and we can get a report for today or something like that.
That's right.
Yeah, really good stuff.
All right, so I guess with that, it's back to you, is it, Mark?
Yeah, we thought we'd just see whether, looks like some of you have been keeping Dean busy on the questions. I see here somebody asking about CCAN, whether we've supported that. Yeah, we've got quite a few customers supporting that. We don't have a direct connector or plugin for CCAN at this point in time, although we are looking at creating one. But you can use either a JSON reader, which is what I was doing, and actually just read the JSON directly from that CCAN API. We also have a thing called the HTTP caller, which is another way of reaching out to these different APIs. Dean, any others there that caught your interest that you might want to share with the rest of the audience?
Yeah, Mark, sure. That's a good point. Yeah, there was a good question that asked about if we support other geospatial solutions based on things like Accumulo, H-based databases in a Hadoop environment. They mentioned GeoMesa, Trellis, and GeoWave. So, do we have any plans to support those?
I think not immediately, but we can certainly start to look into those. We do support Hadoop through a JDBC connector only. So actually, I don't think that would pull back spatial data necessarily.
Not yet.
Not yet, but if there is a demand for that, we have an ideas board, and so if somebody wants to see that in our product, definitely suggest that you throw that up on our ideas on the community and see whether there are other customers there looking who would be interested in that kind of support.
Yeah, but they could load geospatial data, like it could convert, let's say, tabular data into a geospatial form, like GeoJSON, and load that into one of those databases through JDBC or.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, through a JSON document, that would be a piece of cake, and that's essentially what we were doing just with the demo that Steve was doing there.
Just, at the very beginning, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
And the other quick question they had was somebody was curious how you created the air quality HTML report. So I don't know if you have time.
Yeah, we do have time there, so I think I can quickly show that, and I've got that.
Do you want me to make you a presenter then, Mark?
Oh yeah, you got to do that. Okay.
So it's coming your way. Are you ready over here? Yeah.
Yep, so let's just get that workspace.
Yeah, we kind of on purpose left this workspace out just in case we didn't have time. So yeah. We've got time now.
We've got time. So this is that workspace. It's actually reading two data sets. It's reading from the MongoDB database. It's also reading from a table of event locations that we did last year for our world tour. So that's actually a Google Fusion table. So we're up there in the cloud on that front, doing a bit of spatial filtering on that data. When you run this workflow, it asks you for what city you're interested in, and then that's what this test is doing here. It's saying, filtering out the city of interest so that we can get statistics specific to the location of interest. And then here are the tools that we're using to actually create that HTML report, and that's the transformer called the HTML report generator. I've got 3 of them going here for different parts of the table that we created there. And so one of them is creating a little map that Steve showed you in that report. So this is the map end of that report, a couple of headers, as well as the table showing the locations that we used to create that map. I think I've got another one here. Yeah, this is the bar chart. So this is the one that's creating the bar chart, very simple bar chart creator, and so on. And then that's actually just using the feature writer, which is just another way of writing out data and going out to an HTML file. And that's I'm just bringing up one that was done previously, so I think this is probably from yesterday or the day before. So that would be that same report there with the map in there, and it is a dynamic map that you can play around with and zoom in. So any data that you had, and obviously this is just point locations, we could be playing around with that. So yeah, and we will make, I think a couple of people have said, will these examples be made available? And definitely we will do that for you. Okay, so this wasn't a tutorial about creating JSON and working with JSON. And all of our NoSQL databases create the JSON documents. And if you don't do anything, it's just going to create a very simple, flat JSON document. Steve showed you what those look like. But we have a lot of tools within FME for manipulating JSON data. And if you have to make more sophisticated JSON documents that incorporate lists and more hierarchical kind of data structure, on the right-hand side, you can see the transformation tools that we've got. The readers, just so as well as the readers and writers, we've got all these transformation tools. And if you customize those JSON documents, then all of our NoSQL writers will accept a custom JSON document and load that in, rather than having the writer try and create that JSON document for you. So there's a lot of flexibility there, both when you read the JSON out of an API and you need to interpret it and clean it up a bit, or when you're actually writing it out and you need a bit more sophistication than the writer itself will give you. So we'll probably be exploring that down the road in a separate webinar, and I think we are a little bit short on resources on working in JSON on our Knowledge Center, but those articles will be coming pretty soon. But there's a lot of parallel between our JSON support and XML support, and so if you're interested in that, just contact us in support@safe.com. Okay, so in summary, what are our takeaways we hope that you're taking today? Well, does FME have a place in your NoSQL implementation? Well, we think it does, and we hope it does for you. Obviously, the ability for us to read your and write NoSQL databases is key. FME's ability to read from a wide variety of other data formats, both spatial and tabular, allow you to get a wide range of data into your NoSQL database. And if you want to extract some data from NoSQL and structure it into some other format, I think we can help you do that. We've got very strong JSON support and XML if you're using XML in your NoSQL, and we're pretty confident that we can create and interpret those JSON documents that you might have in your NoSQL. And we hope that you don't have to do any coding at all, so it's all done through Workbench GUI environment. So hopefully we've given you a good idea of where FME can fit into a potential NoSQL story for you. Earlier on, we did have a hands up for those of you actively using NoSQL, and they're pretty slim on the ground right now, which has been our experience in the past. But I think a lot of people are starting to experiment with it. So again, if you are in that category where you're going to fire up an experimental NoSQL database in Docker, which is what we've used in the past, that's a good way to get started. Contact us and let us know what you're doing. If you have any problems, we definitely want to hear about them. So just some resources that we've got. Again, you're going to get this PowerPoint with these links and the workflows that we presented here. And I will actually say that we were using our beta release, FME 2017, so we were sticking our necks out a bit there, but that all went smoothly for us today. Yep. So that just goes to show what a great job our developers have done of a new release, which will be coming out next March. So links here on more resources about NoSQL and FME. Tiana here in our office done a great blog on working with NoSQL. Remember, we offer training regularly here at Safe Software. Most of our training now is online, and it's instructor-led and free. So if you haven't taken FME training and you're getting started with FME, or you're upgrading from an older version of FME, certainly encourage you to take that online training. We've changed the structure of that training a bit as well, so we're now moving to a 5-day course, which is a couple of hours a day, so it doesn't take a huge chunk out of the day. In the past, it was 2 mornings in a row, so that was harder for some people to work with. So those resources are available to you there. Yeah. Coming up next May, user conference here in Vancouver, so really encourage you to join us for that. Our last user conference in 2014 was really well attended, and we had a lot of excellent user stories from a wide range of customers that we have. Unbelievable range of stories, actually. And so that's the best way to come and see what other people are using our products for and how they might fit into your organization. So
get some great ideas from what other people are doing that you can take home.
Yeah, and there's going to be a whole bunch of training around available around that user conference as well, so you can up your FME skills as well. Okay, well, I think we've done the Q&A. Dean, were there any other questions slipping in there before we close for the morning?
Yeah, sure, Mark. One other quick question from Ricardo was, what's our experience with big data, or just large? How does FME work with large data sets associated with big data?
Well, we do have, I mean, I think that depends on what your definition of big data is. So if you're talking about terabytes of web monitoring or Twitter feeds, then probably that's not the best use case for FME. But if you're talking about big data sets that you have in an enterprise database that you want to load into a NoSQL database, we're pretty comfortable that we can handle that. And in reality, once you've done that initial data load, you're going to be loading the incremental changes to those databases if you can. And so again, we're pretty comfortable about that. And the other area that we're very comfortable in the big data story is the real-time data that Steve was showing, because that's a steady stream of data. And we have several customers who are really loading a lot of data on a continual database on a continual basis into a database. So we're working very, very well there. So I think it depends on the definition of what big data you're talking about and how you want to manipulate and how you want to load that data in. But FME is certainly capable of working with very large data sets. So with that, I think we're going to close for the morning.
Yeah.
I want to thank Stephanie for producing the webinar. Thanks, Dean, for coming in and fielding the many questions that seem to pop up there. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah,
And it's goodbye for me.
All right, goodbye for me too. And just one closing comment. If you want to engage with us more, get on over to the Knowledge Center, check out the ideas page, and also look at our live chat that we've been using now for what, about 7 months, I suppose it has been going. So thanks everyone for coming.